This episode is brought to you by Resy and American Express. Resy is a digital platform that connects restaurants to restaurant lovers by elevating dining experiences, providing original industry content, and helping to fill some of the country's most exciting dining rooms. Because restaurants have always been more than just places to eat. The amazing world of restaurants is just a few taps away in the Resy app and at resy.com.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
And I did not want a book based on the Confederate Southern identity. Because in the Confederate Southern identity, I am 3/5 of a human being. So bump that. I wanted to make sure people understood there's this, false division between Southern and soul. Not all soul is Southern, right?
Yeah.
And not all Southern is soul.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Eliza Barbanel. Michael W. Twitty is an acclaimed culinary historian and the author of the two-time James Beard Award-winning book The Cooking Gene, as well as Rice and Kosher Soul. His encyclopedic new book, Recipes from the American South, is a deeply researched home cook's guide to the vast genre of Southern cuisine, offering historical insight alongside a diverse array of recipes. It's a delight having Michael on the show to talk about bringing this book to life.
And at the top of the show, it's the return of Three Things, where Eliza and I talk about what is exciting us in the world of restaurants, cookbooks, and the food world as a whole. Eliza, we are back with Three Things. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, definitely. I went to Ceres, finally, the pizza. I'll give a quick scene report. I went there. The caveat is I went there for a Sweet Green activation. So it wasn't like full service. I planned to go back and actually buy a full pie and enjoy the full speed Ceres or Ceres. Probably Ceres. I think that's right, Ceres. I really like it. I think that the flavor development in the dough is very, very obvious and clear. It's a darker pie than I was expecting. I saw some photos online, but I think that day they were even going darker, and I think that was a real strength to it. To remind folks, this is the pizzeria from 11 Madison Park Vets, Julian Geldmacher and Jake Serbnik, and it's on Mott Street in Little Italy, and it's tiny. But I would say, by all accounts, it's worth it to go there and try these pies. What I really liked about the pie as well is the structure. When you hold up the slice, it doesn't really sag. It really holds up, and it's really that beautiful thin, ultra thin crust that has structure and crunch. Very hard to do. We've all had pizza. We all know the floppy pizzas that you can get that are great, but this is not one of them. And I loved it. I can't wait to go back. I think the closest connection is Joe's on Bleecker to me, just as like that inspiration is clearly there. But I liked it. What's your first thing?
Well, my first thing is that I went to Long Island Bar, which is a place I go to a lot, but I had something there that I'd never ordered before, which was the fried cheese curds.
Oh.
Have you had those?
Not there. I have a long history with fried cheese curds in my day.
So you're a cheese curd expert. I would say, despite our lengthy time that we spent in Wisconsin together, I'm not necessarily super into cheese curds. But these cheese curds that I had were incredible. I think they were the best cheese curds I've ever had. They were super light and not too heavy. And they had a little bit of kind of goo because of the fry, but it wasn't too like mozzarella stick level of lava. It was just kind of the perfect cheese curd. And I think a lot of people go to Long Island Bar and just get a burger and fries, which I understand, but I just needed to spread the gospel a little bit.
Love that. Was there any dipping sauce included?
Yeah, they do have like a ranch-like dipping sauce, I think, to dip it in.
Yeah,
it was good.
That's a great choice.
Yeah.
I like a cheese curd that is like fried a la minute and doesn't have too much batter. And it sounds like that's being achieved here.
Yeah, it was the platonic ideal of a cheese curd, in my opinion.
Very cool.
What's your next thing?
My next thing is I want to shout out a coffee roaster in West Michigan called Madcap Coffee. I made a friend on a recent Taste Travels, and this friend sent me a couple bags. Thank you so much. That was really kind of you. And it's a reminder that this is one of our country's finest roasters. I love what they're doing. As a reminder, they're headquartered in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They have cafes in Grand Rapids and Detroit and up north in Leland. And they have been operating the roastery since 2008. So it has a long history. And it's really... I think on the national coffee scene, it might not get as much attention. It could be because it's in West Michigan and not LA or New York, et cetera. But the coffees I tried, and I tried two of them, are spectacular. One is from Yenny Reynoso at Finca Vista Hermosa. It's a Colombian geisha, and it uses honey processing, and it's really drinks really the roasting is everything, and it's very light, so we're tasting the agriculture in the best way. And the other coffee was Elirio Munoz Ortega, and that was a wash coffee that was a more straightforward Colombian. That I love that those types of coffees. Those washed Colombian coffees are some of my favorites, and when they're handled with care as they are at Madcap, highly recommend it. Both are available online. I'm linking to the store in the show notes, and I just love Madcap.
Yeah, that sounds great. I will keep in the beverage direction for my next thing, which is I had some tea that I really enjoyed from a new tea brand here in Brooklyn called Razi Tea. I first started trying their tea because Arjun, who's the founder, started selling chai kind of outside the Fort Greene Farmers Market, hot and cold over the summer. Super delicious, and I just love someone who wants to set up on the sidewalk, really talk with people, get live feedback about what they're doing. They have a Indian breakfast blend, which is not a spice chai, just an English breakfast style blend. He's kind of trying to reclaim that name, although I think it's been a little bit of a marketing problem because people read Indian breakfast blend and assume that it is chai, but it is just this beautiful blend of Assam tea, Darjeeling, and Ceylon tea from Sri Lanka. So it does make a very good chai, as I can attest based on the chai that Arjun is making at the market, but I just made some at home, just drink it black, delicious.
What's your tea setup at home? I've never asked you.
I just have a gooseneck kettle and so many teas, more teas than anyone should have. I believe the teas are labeled tea continued, and then tea part 3 because I have 3 different boxes of it.
I love that.
But I definitely am a winter tea. I think in the summer I'll make iced tea occasionally, like a barley tea or something like that. But in the winter, I'm always a little cold, so I'm just kind of constantly drinking different teas. Another just tea-related thing that I want to do is I was having dinner with Ham and Sola Al-Wali, and I was having this really good rice that Ham had made that tasted almost like a barley or like a mixed grain rice, but it was just white rice. And when I asked him about it, he said that he had leftover barley tea, cold barley tea, that he just used as the basis to make the rice, which made total sense, but it's not something that I've done before. So that's my next kind of tea-related.
Keep the extra tea.
Yeah, make rice with your extra tea.
Yeah, wonderful.
I have a lot of corn tea that I like to drink, like the Korean corn tea, and I feel like it would be really delicious to make rice with the corn tea.
Yeah, the tea sometimes is poured over the stone bowls in Korea, and it's blended together at the final moments of a meal. So
yeah, I mean, you can
that.
do that kind of steeped rice tea thing, or you could just mix the dry rice with
and
the
cook
tea
it with
and
it.
cook it,
Correct.
which is mostly what I want to do. But maybe I'll try both.
No, I like cooking with tea. That's really smart. I love that.
What's your last thing?
My last thing is my friend, the chef Marwana Rani, runs this terrific spice company, Spicewalla. You may have seen it. It's kind of everywhere. Congrats on those guys. They just launched an olive oil, which I think is a really cool evolution for Spicewalla. And I really like this olive oil. And for the record, it is not available in a squeeze bottle. It is zagging where everyone is zigged. It is in a wonderful 17-ounce tin, a beautiful vessel to have on your counter. This olive oil is from Umbria, and it's very flavorful. I would call it, you can definitely cook with it, but I would hold it back for vinaigrettes or drizzling on vegetables. That's definitely the way I would do it. I actually did cook with it recently, and I did some dill mashed potatoes with it, which I love, just boiling potatoes, throwing in a lot of dill, and then adding great olive oil and salt and pepper. And it was a terrific use for that. So that is the Spice Walla Extra Virgin Olive Oil. Really terrific product.
I love the sound of dill mashed potatoes, too.
So good. What's your last thing?
My last thing is that there is a new location of Big Night on the Upper East Side.
Saw that.
I don't know if you've heard about this expansion.
I've heard about it. It's cool.
It's, I think, really interesting to watch Big Night. If people aren't familiar with the store or haven't listened to the episode that I did with Catherine Lewin when they had their book come out, this is a kind of entertaining focused store. Their first location is in Greenpoint. They have one in the West Village, and now they're kind of moving uptown as well. And they offer this really cool blend of like home goods, tabletop stuff, some like pantry essentials as well. And every store is kind of laid out differently, but the one on the Upper East Side is very much like a shoppable apartment kind of experience. There's a kitchen with a kitchen section, this built-in glassware bar, a dining room, and a pantry. And they have their own mix of like their own house product line that I think they're expanding, kind of signature brands like Sabra, whose tortoiseshell flatware is always something I covet if anyone is listening and wants to get me a birthday gift coming up. Sophie Lou Jacobson glassware, lots of other things. I've mentioned on the show recently my love of the Tiny Dollhouse store. It is very close to what I believe is the new Big Night location. So if people wanted to go get like tiny versions of the big things that they're getting, that could be fun.
I love Big Night. I go every year to the West Village location around the holidays for shopping, and I'll definitely buy their pasta candles. I typically buy a couple of those.
The pasta candles that are shaped like
pastas.
Yes.
Terrific gift. And I love that these experiences are like walking through a home. Like, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's so good for gifting, and especially if you're buying something for somebody who, you know, kind of has what they need or has like a specific point of view, like guaranteed to find something that feels like it would be at home in their home.
Speaking of your birthday, what's the birthday plan?
Well,
because you asked.
My birthday is 3 days after my girlfriend Shirley's birthday.
Yeah.
So we are combining our birthdays this year and throwing a big birthday party for all of our friends just so that people don't have to, you know, go super hard back to back.
Yeah.
We are hiring a magician for the birthday party.
Wonderful.
Because I think magicians are like a new kind of trendy thing to have at parties. I think like there's something about this moment in time where generative AI is so prominent. Like we're seeing things all the time that we're not really sure if they're real or not. I think there's something really cool about seeing something that you know is fake, but that you can't catch it and that it's happening in real life. Yeah. And we were at a party and we saw this magician who was doing sleight of hand card tricks and just thought she was so cool and wanted to see our friends like lose their mind over these card tricks.
I love card tricks.
So this is not an open to the public event, but if you are
no link in show notes.
No link in show notes, but if you are a good friend, then hopefully I'll see you there and maybe we'll get some footage of the sleight of hand to go on my Instagram at some point.
Well, happy early birthday, Eliza.
Thank you. Happy Scorpio season to us all, almost.
Thanks for sharing your 3 things.
Yeah, you too.
Today's episode of This Is Taste is brought to you by Grow Therapy. Have you ever tried to Google therapist near me and ended up more anxious than when you started? Now, I did this once and landed on some guy in Brooklyn Heights who wanted to charge me $900 for a session. Now, I get that brownstone living is expensive. And those weekly visits to Lavara, those can add up. But come on, man. $900? Grow Therapy makes it way less overwhelming and way more affordable. Whether it's your first time in therapy or your 50th, Grow makes it easier to find a therapist who fits your needs. They connect you with thousands of independent, licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions, nights and weekends. It's that easy. And you can search by what matters, like insurance, specialty, or availability, and get started in as little as 2 days. And if something comes up, you can cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Grow helps you find therapy on your own time. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0, depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/taste today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/taste. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
I'm always looking for ways to show my cat how much I love her. And with Fancy Feast gems, I can pamper her whenever I want with a savory gravy on top of a gourmet mousse pâté. The pyramid shape makes serving simple, so all I have to do is peel and plate to make mealtime feel extra fancy. And with 2 entrees in every pack, it's easy to turn every day into the extraordinary. Fancy Feast gems.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Michael W. Twitty, this is Taste. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
I'm really excited to have you in the studio. I've been a fan of your books for a while, especially this new one. And before we get into that, I often ask my guests to share an early food memory from growing up. When reading this book, Recipes from the American South, it seems like you had a lot of early food memories that were maybe at play, but I'm wondering if there's one that you'd want to share.
Chitlins. Otherwise known as the small intestine of the pig. 2 people in my house, ate them, 3 people actually. My father, my uncle, and my grandfather. And my grandmother would prepare them. And they were Park's chitlins, which came in a plastic container. And they were disgusting and looked disgusting. And I'm not kidding you that on at least 3 occasions, my mother took me to the National Zoo. And the joke was that the National Zoo had a better fragrance than our home when my grandmother made. My grandmother couldn't stand them. And that's because my grandmother, less because of what they were, more because when they had hog killing time, it was the young girl's job to squeeze them out of any remaining fecal matter. So yeah, that left an indelible impression in my mind. Rest of my life.
What was the impression besides the fact that you didn't like them?
I think it was my first step towards Judaism. But they were really, they looked gross. They smelled gross. And the smell of the house, no matter what you put on them or in them, I think it was a combination of the vinegar, the onion, and the no matter how much you clean them, they would just never clean enough.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I think a lot of people listening would be like, pork intestine, how is that your first step towards Judaism?
I mean, I half joke, but it was really just like, ugh. Because, I mean, chitlins are like informally a very strong signifier of the Black Southern heritage. Because it's about survival and joy and making the best out of what you have and being attached to the land.
Yeah.
And I've found other ways to do that outside of chitlins, which you can obviously do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's right. And I feel like there are so many, chopped liver, gefilte fish. There are a lot of Jewish staple foods that I grew up with that I didn't like, but my family ate. And I remember, I don't know if you ever did this with chitlins, but really trying to be like, I'm going to keep eating chopped liver until I like it because, everyone else around me is doing it. And, I feel like that's the way I have to do it. But I honestly still don't really like it.
Have you ever had picha?
No, what is that?
Picha it goes by a couple other names in Yiddish, but picha was the people still make it. It's calf's foot jelly.
Oh. Okay.
And the only thing that makes it any better, and I've only had a little tiny, as much garlic as you can throw at it. Mm. Yeah, that's how that works.
I feel like garlic does right by a lot of things.
Yeah, it does. It's an angel.
So this book, Recipes from the American South, is your 4th book, but to me it seems like there are threads of it that have appeared in other projects you've worked on. I'm curious when you began kind of developing the idea for this book in earnest.
So Emily Takudis, editor at Fiden, reached out to me to find an author, preferably a young author, preferably somebody who wasn't, off-the-shelf type for these books, preferably someone who was starting out. And frankly, I was like, okay, well, I'll look around. I did. Nobody wanted to do it. Then I said, well, let me find a partner somebody I can write with. That was difficult. And then eventually nobody wanted to do it. And then she was like, you know what? Hold on. I got Michael Twitty in front of me. Obviously you can do this.
Yeah.
So why not try? And I said, okay. And then I thought about like my life experience. You know, you obviously representing the cooking gene, rice, which is part of the Southern cookbook series that UNC Press did, Savoring the South, and then Kosher Soul, all of which have elements of Southern history, Southern food, and you know, the basic pieces. And at that point, I didn't really understand my own self-worth in this. And I was like, oh, right. I've been to Europe several times. I've sought out the parts of, you know, British food, French food, Germanic food that came to the South. I've been to West Africa now 8 times. I've read all these books my entire life. I mean, it's not usual that 5, 6, 7-year-old kids are watching cooking shows on PBS. And then it becomes 10, 12, 13, 14. And then somewhere around you switch over to the Food Network and read the books, did the work, interviewed all 4 of my grandparents as I was growing up. And then the Southern Discomfort Tour, which led to the cooking gene, was me and my former partner, Jacob, may he rest in peace, traveling, you know, the entire breadth of the South. So at what point between the Vietnamese gardeners in New Orleans and the Mennonite sorghum farmers and all the people in between did I not have the chops to do this? And that's something, I mean, I guess for someone who's still relatively younger, and I still look good for 48, thank you so much. It's hard to see yourself because you've seen people who are 2x, 3 times your age do the work, but they have money and they have experiences and you don't, but wait a minute, I was like, wait a minute, you are organically prepared for this. This doesn't come from a class, come from a school, it doesn't come from someone blessing you or making you. You did this because you wanted to. Now write this book. It's your thesis.
It really is. It's like an encyclopedia. It has so much breadth in terms of what you're covering and the kinds of recipes and the families and the stories. And you write a little bit about how the American South isn't a culinary monolith. I'm curious what you would say the like key influences are and how you went about trying to like both highlight these threads and then also see how they become woven together.
I wanted to make sure, the first thing was to write down the recipes that I wanted to do, to list them out. That's all. I'm ashamed to say I forgot fried okra, but that's why God made Kol Nidre. But yeah, I went through all the whole thing of like, okay, so I did include the chitlins and the pig feet, right? Also included possum and sweet potatoes, which I hope nobody ever makes. And I just kind of went through what are the dishes and the recipes that are essential. This book is written for English speakers that are global, particularly North America and Europe, right? So you have to kind of like think about what people have access to. I strongly disagree with some of the European editors' suggestions like Lyle's golden syrup for sorghum syrup. No, ma'am.
That's crazy. I'm sorry.
Or the linguistic terms like black-eyed peas are always called black-eyed beans. Like,
in the book, you say black-eyed beans, also known as black-eyed peas. I'd never heard of the beans before.
Yeah, that's how they do over there. So it was done to be an international book. I'm like, ugh. But, I mean, going through, I want to make sure that all the indigenous, African, West Central African, Western, Northern European cultures were there, but also Asian cultures in the South. A little bit, since I did so much for Kosher Soul, I didn't do Coca-Cola brisket because unless you actually spell out why it's Jewish Southern. Now, matzo ball gumbo could have been one, or I could have, but that was a little. Those of you who've done cookbooks, you understand this. Cookbooks aren't, oh, I have a fun recipe, I'm just going to jot it down, then somebody will publish it. Nah, they got to test it, they got to make sure it's this and that. And by the way, by the time you get done with that book, it's still going to have missing pieces and mistakes. So I did Sephardic pink rice because I had red rice. And I noticed after a while I was doing a lot of that pairing, right? Mm-hmm. So pink rice, red rice, makshu from Louisiana, succotash from the eastern seaboard South. okra soup, okra gumbo. You get it. And so on. So these foods that are quite similar, but read very differently to the people who know them intimately. So that was my big goal, was to make sure I had the cultures, the breadth of cultures, from Kurdish to Salvadoran to, Chinese, Mississippi Delta folks, to making sure that the recipe showed not just one version, but how different dishes morph across space and time.
Yeah, I thought seeing that evolution was a really special part of it. I'm blanking on the name of the dish right now, but you have a beignet recipe, and then you have it's a rice-based beignet.
Yeah, kala.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah, kala is from Louisiana, and so the word comes from Wanda Bakala, which means in southwestern part of Cameroon, which is the English-speaking part of Cameroon, it means beans of the Europeans, which is how they thought of Asian rice, because their rice was red if they saw it through trade. And so kala also comes from the word akara, which more people know from Nigerian food. But it's not just Nigerian, it's all the cultures that lived in that area, the Be speakers and the Yoruba speakers and et cetera. And so there are the cookbook that I initially researched many years ago said, oh yeah, on the streets of New Orleans, the black women sell these rice fritters in the morning for breakfast. And it says you can also get ones made out of congee, which is black-eyed peas. So that's very powerful, because these are both fritters from a West African background where the name is preserved, like the word fevi in New Orleans, which means okra. And it's like, oh, they're making black-eyed pea fritters in Louisiana too, and I made them in Virginia and South Carolina. The problem, why did I include that recipe specifically? It's not easy to translate into something. I was never the person to do first do this, second do this, third do this. And some of these recipes, you don't always get a consistent result. And so I didn't want people complaining at me. Like, I know how to do it, and I could just do it from years of experience. But to be honest with you, the African version means you take off the entire skin of the black-eyed pea, and then you mash them, and then you make them okay, right? Then the Virginia version is you don't do none of that, but you kind of mash them. But you can probably tell, unless you get it down as a skill, you're going to have some peas floating in some of this, and sometimes they'll be consistent. So I didn't want to put myself through that. But challah are a wonderful recipe. I did them for the first time with Jose Andres and his class a couple years ago.
Cool.
So it was really nice.
Yeah, I feel like it must have been really difficult to think of all of the recipes that should be in the book and then the ones that you really want to spend time on. And also thinking about like this cliche that often can come up around Southern food and what Southern food is or isn't. How did you go about trying to like avoid that kind of stereotype?
The first thing was I told the photography people, I said, no red and white checkerboard tablecloths.
Yeah, there isn't any.
Sakes. No, because I didn't want people to start hearing harmonicas in their head as they flip through the cookbook. I didn't want that kind of, rustic, folksy vibe, because not all Southern food is rustic and folksy. We're also, one thing I did not say, which I wanted to say, but I kind of didn't have a proper way to say it, is how performative Southern identity can be. It's not so that everything came down from the past. So, for example, people, when you watch movies, somebody has a Southern accent, that's from some person most of the time who trained them in that. But as you go to the South, for example, in Virginia it's Monticello. In Georgia it's Monticello. These are shibboleths. Good Bible vocabulary word. Shibboleths used to distinguish between the Northerner and a Southerner. And these are all post-Civil War. And I did not want a book based on the Confederate Southern identity. Because in the Confederate Southern identity, I am 3/5 of a human being. So bump that. I wanted to make sure people understood there's this, false dichotomy, division between Southern and soul. Not all soul is Southern, right?
Yeah.
And not all Southern is soul. but they are in Venn diagram with each other, obviously. But I didn't want to have a book where it was just obvious, like those tropes came marching right after you turned the cover.
Yeah. I mean, I love talking about the words that we use for things and how that comes into play. And in the book, you also talk about how there's a difference between Cajun and Creole.
Mm-hmm. Cajun are the people who were exiled from Acadia, from Nova Scotia. Not all of them left. And of those who came down, 1,700 people become the multiple thousands who are the Cajun people of Louisiana today. And what's interesting, what's very powerful about that is that I think people think that they brought their culture wholesale and they had already interacted with the Mi'kmaq and other indigenous groups in Canada. But when they get to South Louisiana, they're living on the margins, near the swamp, the bayou, and the river the floodplain. And a lot of their cultural influences were not, French came from the Chitimacha, the Choctaw, and of course, enslaved Africans. That's where the rice and the gumbo and the okra and the hot peppers. But Cajun food is very rural. Creole food was always very cosmopolitan. And but these cultures also did mix and exchange over time. And it's just another key example of people migrate, they mix, and they morph. Yeah.
Yeah. Something I was really struck by when reading is you're talking about how the garden and the growing season in the South is really what influenced Southern vegetable traditions. Could you speak about that a little bit?
Sure. If you live in the deep east of Texas, it's a really long growing season. It's anywhere from 9 to 12 months. Springtime in the deep east of Texas is, January, late January, early February. Whereas if you are living in the Chesapeake region or the Piedmont, you're feeding animals and doing not much else. In Appalachia, you're doing nothing, but you're tapping maple. All these other things. You might be growing some greens, but not likely. You know what I'm saying? So South Florida, Marjorie Keenan Rawlings of Cross Creek fame, they're growing oranges. That tradition is very old there. So it's like where you lived really determined what you grew and also what vegetables were available when. So for us in Virginia and, also nearby Maryland, okra is late July through early October. Whereas if you're in Mississippi, okra is way earlier and finishes way earlier. So those things will determine, and not everybody had everything. That's really important to talk about. Like, for example, everybody thinks everybody had collard greens. They didn't. In fact, collards were growing in Hanover County, Virginia, which is about an hour away from me, give or take. And then, but yet, people didn't have collards were not a common crop, maybe 30 miles west. So can you imagine, places you can drive to within, an hour and a half today, people never even heard of a certain vegetable in that time.
Yeah, and then also the meat preservation, meat smoking tradition also partially you write about comes back to this really long, warm growing season. That also means you can't just be keeping your meat outside during that period of time.
Right. You have to do it in the deep cold of the winter.
Right.
Like we don't understand. I don't think any of us really understand what that would have meant and what that was like. That's to do that and we also understand that climate and weather change and that there was a little ice age period that was at the start. But of course, because of industrialization, other things, the hottest years the South knew to that point historically, of course, showed up right on time for antebellum slavery. Right on time. And it was just like, okay, so how do you do this? How do you wait until, January, even early February to, it was a massive effort. So it's a constant evolving thing. I've debated whether or not I'm going to try to do a full-on cultural history of Southern food. I mean, a massive 800 page.
I was going to say, this book is already 400 pages.
Right? I'm like, she's like, what you going to do with the 400 more pages?
I believe you could fit a lot in there because reading the book, like you have these recipes, you have these essays. It's clear that they're rooted in conversations with people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know how to talk about that because I imagine that it must have been such a lengthy process. But I'm curious if there's anything that you thought about or maybe reframed that surprised you when you were working on the book.
The first thing was to edit my memories, edit my research, edit my mind. Because yes, this could have been, 400 recipes at least, and much longer. But something, everybody needs to understand this. Again, you're not taking a bunch of grandma recipes that are just jotted down and then adding some language and then bim, bam, boom, it's easy to write a cookbook. This is basically 18 to 36 hours, give or take, per long recipe. Now, if it's the brubs and the sauces and stuff, nah, that wasn't 18 hours. But those cakes, right?
Yeah.
The pies, some of the longer, like the roast turkey, these things that people gonna quibble about. It's not, sure, the way they did those cookbooks back in the day was they just kind of, regurgitated, plagiarized, and whatever else, and bam, bam, boom, in a cookbook. This is different. Some of these recipes literally are 18 to 36 hours of work.
And I imagine also, you're thinking about the community people that's going to read this book. You write a little bit about how every recipe is different because people have family tradition, family preferences, but people are going to be looking at your cornbread recipe and saying, well, my family doesn't do the cornbread like that.
Ma'am. And they're going to give me the New York Times treatment, which is, oh, well, I make this recipe, da-da-da-da-da, and I use
swap in kale.
And I'm like, you know what? So I do try to provide variations when possible. Mm-hmm. And that's why there's so many daggone biscuit and cornbread recipes.
There are a lot.
Like Hush Puppies from Eastern North Carolina are very different from the ones that you might be used to getting elsewhere in the South. Because they're this weird kind of a cheese curl kind of shape. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, hot water cornbread has a very different purpose and plan than the stuff in the skillet, right? And so you go through and you kind of work through, cat head biscuits are really popular. Of course, you have to convince people who are not familiar that they don't actually contain any cat parts.
Right. They're the size of a cat's head.
Baby, when they say, I don't like cat. I don't like frogs. I don't want frogmore stew. I said, no, frogmore stew, boo-boo, is a seafood boil. Well, I like that. But can I leave the frogs out? I'm like, oh, my God.
Yeah, can we talk about Southern names? I feel like there are so many really fun, imaginative names for dishes like Hoppin' John.
Yep, because it's our family. The food is our family. The food has nicknames. In a Southern family, you can go years without knowing the real name of a person. Because it's who the hell is that? So my uncle, who is my grandfather's junior, his nickname is Fat Boy. He is not a fat boy. He is he's pushing past 60. He's all muscle. Has always been that kind of person who, but they call that was kind of it's like an opposite name of what they actually are.
Yeah.
And so when you're 5 or 6 years old, that's your Uncle Fat Boy. What's up, boy? Da, 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 da. And then you keep calling this person's name, and then one day somebody says, Gonsley Jr. Who the hell is Gonsley Jr.? Oh, that's Fat Boy. What? So in the same way, we could say okra and rice. Instead, we say Limp and Susan. Mm-hmm. We could say black-eyed peas and rice. Instead, we say Hoppin' John. We could say, oh, that sweet golden bread. No, we say Sally Lunn, and so on and so on and so on and so forth. And so, in Louisiana, it gets worse. Because it's what kind of fish you going to make? Chupique? So, oh, man.
What is that?
Chupique is bowfin.
Okay.
Which is a really prehistoric, nasty-ass fish. It's not pleasant. It's not great, but it's like poor man's, salmon to them. There's another fish there's another term for snapping turtle and, a term for heron, which country people would eat. There's poor little herons or poor big herons, whatever. But I guess the point is that there was a whole vocabulary about nature that was indigenous, French, and African Louisiana. In Gullah Geechee, there's different words that come from West Central African languages for animals, or words that here's the kicker, words that come from words that are translations of words from West Africa into English. So in South Carolina, in Georgetown, near Georgetown, South Carolina, I met a woman named Laura, and Laura was, really made some really good red rice and other things. And I said, well, what are you going to catch? She said, I'm going to catch me a wildmouth. And I knew what she meant. And it was wild. It was like, oh, you mean a catfish, a wildmouth, a wide mouth.
Oh.
But in Mende, which is one of my ancestral languages and roots, the word for catfish is the thing with the wide mouth. But they translate it in their mind into English and then use that clipping, wildmouth. So it's fascinating. It's like, I don't think New Englanders, Midwesterners, or West Coast people, unless we're talking about Pacific Rim or Frontera border food, have that many daggone names. I mean, cioppino, which nobody knows who said cioppino first. It sounds Italian, but no Italian ever made cioppino, right? The seafood stew that they make in San Francisco. Sourdough bread is kind of hard to give that a name other than sourdough bread is what it is.
Yeah.
But the point is I think that over time, and because some of the cultures are so poetic, are so floral, that naming tradition emerged, and it's really unique.
Yeah, I think it is so special, and it speaks to the mythology of food and culture and the way that you can hold things dear so that they have a name that everybody knows to call it, even if someone that isn't from there doesn't know what it is.
I wish I could think of on top of my mind that name of the snapping turtle, but I will text you and be like, 4 hours later and be like, figured it out.
Just send me the name and I'll have to remember that it's referencing a snapping turtle. I might be like, now what is Michael sending me right now?
Finish training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
Big news. Sephora is now on Uber Eats. So if you find yourself facing a beauty emergency, like needing a last-minute gift, or you're just out of your favorite mascara, again, don't panic. We got you. Order now and get $10 off on Sephora orders of $50 or more on the Uber Eats app. Order now. Offer ends October 30th. One order per customer. Additional terms apply. See app for availability. Delivery fees may apply.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
We talked a little bit about how the South is not rooted in the past, it's present and evolving. I'm curious if there's anything about contemporary Southern food that you're finding especially inspiring or interesting.
Honestly, it's hard to do that because there's, in restaurant culture, chef culture, you say, we're going to have a salad of blue crab, red field peas with a sorghum cane vinegar gastrique and da-da-da-da. It's not a, that's a nice little listing of what's in there, but it's not a dish. You see what I'm saying? So we don't create dishes anymore.
Yeah.
We create lists of ingredients that are supposed to be cunning and cute and witty and novel, even though it says in the Bible, there's nothing new under the sun. And I say that in that way because any Southerner hearing this will understand that, coming in particular, that King James, fundamentalist tradition. Like, these are built into the culture.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, yeah, well, yeah, we don't. So if you called it a name and create a tradition around it, that might be cool. But because we don't have that anymore, it's like, And then other things you see people do to my chagrin is if you want to have people complain, like Atlanta, I love you, but Atlanta has not actually succeeded in providing a pantry for the New South, the new South. I can give all due respect to the chefs there because Todd Ginsburg, Chef Dwayne Nutter, fantastic. But the thing about it is overall food culture, they're not making, new dishes and new things. And typically, especially in terms of Black food culture there, it's like, how many lamb chops and salmon with hot honey can we do? And I worry about that because, this is this is America's largest cultural and culinary region, and its time has tradition and time honor. Also has innovation, in its way. But I worry also. Third part is I worry about the fact that because of our cultural moment, where this attempt to force us back to a monoculture, that is not conducive to great eating. Neither is getting rid of the people who cook the food. Neither is getting rid of the people who, make the food new. On a last part to answer your question, it's like Sandra Gutierrez, I have 2 recipes. One's collard green empanadas in there. Other one is like the dirty rice.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. If you don't have a welcoming place where people can come into and contribute to the culture, the food will not expand beyond its boxes and bubbles. Just my opinion.
I'm just sitting with this idea about creating new dishes still, because I do think that is so interesting when you read historical books, like these cakes that are being created or all of these dishes. Like I do feel like the only new things that I can think of being invented today are like the cronut or the what is it? The crookie? The croissant?
The crookie.
The croissant cookie, I think.
Wow.
They have one down the block from here is what I would say.
Of course.
I feel like it's a lot of gimmicky foods, but the idea of creating a wholly new dish, I wonder if that is unique to the South or if it just feels like we're reached the point of food saturation and culture or are there even new dishes to be made?
Are there even new dishes to be made? That's a good question. Of course there are, but we just don't. It's like you see other cultures and they have these names and these embodiments and arguments over what's essential for this particular thing,
Right.
And I have to do some more thinking about what creates a situation where it's almost like with words and language, right? There's a whole, was it the Institute or something in France where they, on the French language?
Yes.
Where they debate about what should be standard French. And on the one hand, that's maybe a little too precious for us. But on the other hand, I kind of wouldn't mind it.
For food, you mean?
For food, yes.
For dishes.
Yes.
I mean, I think your point about, I think fusion maybe has this external perception, right? That it's somebody who's not a part of either culture combining them, but the natural ebb and flow that happens where immigration, displacement, whatever happens, people are cooking each other's food in something like a collard green empanada that's created. That is a dish in its own right. That's its own thing. So I think that probably is where the new dishes are being created somewhere, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, in that space between where we have cultures. And also just the fact that that's, I don't know, one of the great pains that I've experienced socioculturally is for people to kind of go, if you don't like the people, and like people's language and their culture and their customs, then why are you up in their grill about their food?
Yeah.
It's kind of disrespectful, but it's also disrespectful to the idea of America. Unless you consider the fact that we recombine and we remorph, and that's just a part of the process, or that these things that used to be completely, when you've never known a time when sushi wasn't a thing. When I was a little boy, I remember sushi was yuppie food. And I mean yuppie food in a very derisive way.
Yeah.
And then within seconds, sushi went from being this weird, foreign, odd food introduced during the, way back when, but gaining popularity outside of the Japanese community during the time of when Japanese business was everybody won in the 80s, to not, I think, was it almost 2/3 of all kosher restaurants? To think about that. Kosher restaurants have sushi on the menu. Not to mention the fact that teenagers go to take sushi to school for lunch.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that people, they want a quick dinner. They've learned to make their own sushi at home.
They have sushi at baseball stadiums.
Right.
It's become the and that, partially one of the reasons why sushi has always been relatively common in my experience is that I grew up in California. So things expand in that kind of way. Where
you're eating food from the Pacific Rim as well as the borderland and California food.
Right.
On top of something ish that came down from migrants to California. California soul food, California versions of country food that came from the Dust Bowl and miner food, among many other things. And being in LA your hometown, taught me a lot about Southern food. Because it's asking the question, what remains, what stays, and what's going to change, and what's never going to be. That's how you really think about what those icons are and what they've done.
Yeah, I'm curious, after working on the book, how do you feel about your own Southern identity?
Confirmed, a little prouder, a little more, because I think for some people, I code switch a lot. So when I'm speaking to you, I'm using my best standard English voice. But when I'm at home, I'm talking to my husband, I'm talking to my animals, and I talk to Lorelai and I say, girl, get down from there. Go on. Talking to my granddaddy, where you finna go? It's because there is a certain double standard and linguistic red line around the way Southerners speak, particularly Black Southerners. And so, no, I'm not gonna talk to you like that. I'm gonna speak to you like this so I can get your professional confidence. But once I get agitated or angry or in love, I'm gonna speak the way that my granddaddy and them talk. And I'm very and that gives me an umph, because I think some people think Southern don't mean us. But you can't do nothing Southern without us. Us meaning Black Southerners and us meaning Southerners of color. And also queer Southerners. And also I make a point to say our cuisine was invented by our women who are often not thanked and disrespected, even though one of the first cooking shows in America is Lena Richard. And then there's the great late Nellie Dupree, among others, and Edna Lewis, and on and on and on and on. And so it's so critical to remind people how far we've come and how far we got to go.
No, I really appreciate you saying that. I think at the end of the book, you're giving a great list of references of people whose work you find inspirational, and you make a point of calling out these Southern women and what they've kind of brought to that. So I think it's fitting to maybe end our conversation today on that note as well. I wish I had time to keep talking to you forever, but I think this is a great start. And if people are interested in hearing more from you, then they should obviously check out your book.
Absolutely. I'm really proud of this. I just wanted to say, speaking of those women, those ladies, that when I was 11 years old, I told my grandmother, Hazel Todd Townsend, I said, Grammy, I'm going to write a big book about the South one day, and it's all about the South. This happened, she's long been gone, but this would have been her 100th birthday this year.
Wow.
So this is a great dedicated to my grandmother, born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1925.
Wow. Well, I'll be thinking of your grandma and of a lot of these dishes for a long time. So thank you again, Michael.
Thank you so much.
This is Taste is hosted and produced by Matt Rodbard and me, Eliza Barbanel. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell, logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzak. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com And make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contracts. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.